Alright, hey guys, it's another Murderous Monday, but we are doing it on Thursday today because, uh, I don't know, I just haven't gotten around to do it. But I know in the new year, that's one of my goals to strive for in the new year is to make every Murderous Mondays on Mondays. But now, before we get started, look, there's Chloe. Meow meow. Hi. Yeah, yeah. It's Christmas time once again. Actually less than 2 weeks away. So, you know, this is about giving and getting. So if you guys can give me a subscriber, I can give if you guys can give me a subscription, if you guys can subscribe to me on Murderous Mondays or my wrestling channel or whatever, I will give you some good content. And in the new year, I also will try to edit more of my Murderous Mondays because I know every time I say or I lose my spot, you guys don't like that. But anyway, here we go. Hey guys, what's up? On this channel, Murderous Mondays, I talk about killers, and I upload mostly every Monday, hence the name. And this is another 2-in-1 case, because the next killers I will be talking about are Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the Columbine shooting killers. Who were they? What were their early lives like? And how and why did how did they become so evil? I will answer that and more as you take you down the perspective mind of a serial killer / school shooter. Early lives of both perpetrators. Eric David Harris, born on April 9th, 1981 in Wichita, Kansas. Harris's parents were both born and raised in Colorado. His mother, Catherine Ann Poole, was a homemaker. His father, Wayne Harris, was working in the United States Air Force as a transport pilot. In 1983, the family moved to Dayton, Ohio, when Harris was just 2 years old. 6 years later, the family relocated to Oscoda, Michigan. Michigan pastor William Stone lived across the street from the Harris family while they were located in Oscoda. Stone recalled them as great neighbors and often saw Wayne very engaged with his sons. The Harris family then moved to Plattsburgh, New York in 1991, where fun fact, my brother and his girlfriend are both in Plattsburgh College right now. Well, they actually came down for the Christmas break. But anyway, during his time at Stafford Middle School, Harris played Little League Baseball, regularly went to birthday parties, and was part of the crowd, quote, in quotations. Kyle Ross, a former classmate of Harris, said he was just a typical kid. The Harris family finally settled back in Littleton, Colorado, the next year when Wayne retired from the military. On a 1997 English class assignment, Harris wrote about how difficult the move was from New York to Colorado. He said, and I quote, "It was the hardest moving from Plattsburgh. I have the most memories from there," Harris continued. When I left his friends, I felt alone, lost, and even agitated that I had to spend so much time with them, and now I have to go because of something I can't stop. Harris in a basement tape, blamed his father for moving the family around, forcing Harris to start out of the bottom of the ladder. Harris had a chest deformity known as pectus excavatum, in which the breastbone sinks into the chest. This made Harris reluctant to take off his shirt in gym class, as other students would ridicule him. Harris had 2 cosmetic surgeries at 12 and 13 to repair the deformity. The sunken chest was still mildly observable during his autopsy. The Harris family lived in rented accommodations for the first 3 years that they lived in the Littleton area. While Harris was in 7th grade, he met Klebold, Dylan Klebold. In 1996, the Harris family purchased and settled at a house south of Columbine High School, where was when this story basically takes place. Harris's older brother, Kevin, attended college at the University of Colorado. Harris's father took a job with Flight Safety Services Corporation, and Harris's mother became a caterer. Harris entered Columbine High School in 1995 as a freshman. Columbine had just gone through a major renovation and expansion. From all accounts, he had many friends and was left forward and midfield on the Columbine soccer team for his freshman and sophomore year. Josh Swanson, one of his teammates, said that Harris was a solid soccer player who enjoyed the sport a lot. During his freshman year, Harris met Tiffany Teifer. They had German class together. Teifer later recounted that Harris quickly wooed her. Harris asked her to homecoming, and she accepted. After the event, it appeared that Teifer was no longer interested in seeing Harris anymore, for reasons were never disclosed. When Teifer refused to socialize with Harris again, Harris staged a fake suicide, sprawling on the ground with fake blood splashed all over him. When Teifer saw him on the ground, she began to scream for help, at which point Harris and his friends began laughing, prompting Teifer to storm off, shouting at Harris to get psychological help. Now, Dylan Bennett Klebold. He was born on September 11th, 1981, in Lakewood, Colorado, to Thomas and Sue Klebold. On the day after the shootings, Klebold's mother remembered that shortly after Klebold's birth, she described what felt like a shadow cast over her, warning that this child would bring her great sorrow. She said, "I think I still make of it what I did at that time. It was a passing feeling that went over very quickly, like a shadow," Sue said in an interview with the Colorado Public Radio. Klebold was soon diagnosed with pyloric stenosis, a condition in which the opening between the stomach and small intestines thickens, causing severe vomiting during the first few months of life. Klebold's parents had met when they both were studying art at Ohio State University. After they both graduated, they married in 1971 and had their first child, Byron, being born in 1978. Thomas had initially worked as a sculptor, but then moved over to engineering to be more financially stable. Sue had worked in assistance services with disabled children. Furthermore, Klebold's parents were pacifists and attended a Lutheran church with their children. Both Klebold and his older brother attended confirmation classes in accordance with the Lutheran tradition, As had been the case with his older brother, Klebold was named after a renowned poet, Dylan Thomas. Klebold attended Normandy Elementary School for 1st and 2nd grade and then transferred to Governor's Ranch Elementary School, where he was part of the challenging High School Intellectual Potential Students program for gifted children. According to reports, Klebold was exceptionally bright as a young child, although he appeared somewhat sheltered in elementary school. When he transitioned to Ken Carroll Middle School, he found it difficult. Fellow classmates recalled Klebold being painfully shy and quiet, often to an uncomfortable degree. Klebold's parents were unconcerned with the fact that Klebold found the changing of schools uneasy, as they assumed it was just regular behavior among young adolescents. At the family home, the Klebolds also observed some rituals in keeping with Klebold's maternal great-grandfather Jewish heritage. During his earlier school years, Klebold played baseball, soccer, and t-ball, just like Eric Harris. It was almost like they were meant for each other. Klebold was a Cub Scout with friend Brooks Brown, whom he was friends with since the 1st grade. Brown lived near the house Harris's parents had bought when they finally settled in Littleton, and rode the same bus as Harris. Shortly after, Klebold had met Harris, and the pair quickly became best friends. Later, Harris introduced Klebold to his friend Nathan Dykeman, who also attended their middle school, and they all became a tight-knit group of friends. Personalities and friendship. Both Harris and Klebold worked together as cooks at a Blackjack Pizza a mile south from Columbine High School. Harris was eventually promoted to shift leader, and he and his group of friends were interested in computers and were enrolled in a bowling class. Some described Harris as charismatic, and others described him as nice and likable. Harris also often bragged about his ability to deceive others, once stating in a tape that he could make anyone believe anything. By his junior year, Harris was also known to be quick to anger and threatened people with bombs. Wow. Classmates also related that Harris was fascinated by war and wrote out violent fantasies about killing people he did not like. Klebold was described by his peers and adults as painfully shy. Klebold was fidgety whenever someone new talked to him, rarely opening up to people. Klebold was also exceptionally nervous in front of women, which probably I was back then. I probably still am. In the last year of his life, many noted a change in Klebold's behavior. Unlike before, Klebold became short-tempered, often prone to sudden outbursts of anger. Friendship. Much of the information on Harris and Klebold's friendship is unknown. On their interactions and conversations aside from the basement tapes, of which only transcripts have been released, aside from a short audio clip recorded surreptitiously by a victim's father. The pair claimed they were going to make copies of the tapes and send it to news stations, but never did so. Harris and Klebold met at Ken Carroll Middle School during their 7th grade year. Over time, they became increasingly close, hanging out by often going out bowling, carpooling, and playing the video game Doom over a private server connected to their personal computers. By their junior year of high school, the boys were described as inseparable. Chad Laughlin, a close friend of Harris and Klebold, said that they always sat alone together at lunch and often kept to themselves. A rumor eventually started that Harris and Klebold were gay and romantically involved due to the time the pair spent together. It is unknown if they were aware of this rumor. Judy Brown believed Harris was more emotionally dependent on Klebold, who was more liked by the broader student population. In his journals, however, Klebold wrote that he felt that he was not accepted or loved by anyone. Due to these feelings, Klebold possibly sought validation from Harris. Klebold's mother believes Harris's rage intermingled with Klebold's self-destructive personality caused the boys to feed off each other and enter in what eventually became an unhealthy relationship. The Columbine High School. At Columbine High School, Harris and Klebold were active in school play productions, operated video productions, and became computer assistants, maintaining the school's computer server. According to the early accounts of the shooting, they were very unpopular students and targets of bullying. While sources do support accounts of bullying, specifically directed toward Harris and Klebold, accounts of them being outcasts have been reported to be false, since both of them had a close-knit group of friends. Harris and Klebold were initially reported to be members of a clique that was called the Trenchcoat Mafia, despite later confirmation that the pair had no connection to the group and furthermore did not appear in the group's photo in the Columbine's High School 1998 yearbook. Harris's father erroneously stated that, that's a big word, he stated that his son was a member of what they call the Trenchcoat Mafia in a 911 call he made on the day of the shooting. Klebold attended the high school prom 3 days before the shootings with a classmate named Robin Anderson. Harris and Klebold linked their personal computers on a network and played video games over the internet. Harris created a set of levels for the game Doom, which later became known as Harris levels. The levels are downloadable over the internet through Doom WADs. WADs. Harris had a web presence under the handle REB, short for Rebel, a nod to the nickname of Columbine High's sports teams, and other online aliases including Rebel Dawmaker, Reb Doomer, and Rebdomine. Klebold went by the names Vodka after the alcoholic beverage. Harris had various websites that hosted Doom and Quake files, as well as team information for those with whom he played games online with. The sites openly espoused hatred for people in their neighborhood and the world in general. When the pair began experimenting with pipe bombs, they posted results of the explosions on the websites. The website was shut down by America Online after the shootings and was preserved for the FBI. Initial criminal activity. On the night of January 30th, 1998, Harris and Klebold broke into a locked van to steal computers and other electronic equipment. A short while after, a Jefferson County Sheriff's officer drove upon the two boys parked further down road at another park entrance, and since the park area was closed by the time of night, the arresting deputy decided to further inspect them. The deputy announced his presence as one of the boys prepared to move the stolen goods into the trunk of the car. Harris shortly admitted to theft after the deputy asked about where the equipment came from. They were later charged with mischief, breaking and entering, trespassing, and theft. They both left good impressions on juvenile officers, who offered to expunge their criminal records if they agreed to attend a diversionary program which included community service and psychiatric treatment. Harris was required to attend anger management classes, where again he made a favorable impression. The boys' probation officer discharged them from the program after a few months ahead of schedule for good behavior. Regarding Harris, it was remarked that he was a very bright individual who is likely to succeed in life, which he didn't, while Klebold was said to be intelligent, but needs to understand that hard work is part of fulfilling a dream. Several months later, on April 30th, Harris handed over the first version of a letter of apology he wrote to the owner of the van, which he completed the next month. In the letter, Harris expressed regret about his actions. However, in one of his journal entries, dated April 12th, he wrote, "Isn't America supposed to be the land of the free? How come if I'm free I can't deprive some fucking dumb shit from his possessions if he leaves them sitting in the front of his fucking van in plain sight in the middle of fucking nowhere on a fucking day night?" Hitman for hire. When an economics class had Harris make an ad for a business, he and Klebold made a video called Hitman for Hire on December 8th, 1998, which was released in February of 2004. It depicts them as part of the Trenchcoat Mafia, a clique in the school who wore black trench coats, extorting money for protecting preps from bullies. They were apparently not a part of the Trenchcoat Mafia, but were friends with some of its members. They wore black trench coats on the day of the massacre, and the video seemed a kind of dress rehearsal showing them walking the halls of the school and shooting bullies outside with fake guns. Both also displayed themes of violence in their creative writing projects of a doom-based story written by Harris on January 17th, 1999. Harris's teacher said, "Yours is a unique approach, and your writing works in a gruesome way. Good details and mood setting." Alright, acquiring the firearms. Harris and Klebold were unable to legally purchase firearms due to their both being underage at the time. Klebold then enlisted Robin Anderson, an 18-year-old Columbine student, an old friend of Klebold's, to make a straw purchase of 2 shotguns and a high-point carbine for the pair. In exchange for her cooperation with the investigation that followed the shootings, no charges were filed against Anderson. After illegally acquiring the weapons, Klebold sawed off his Savage 311-D12- double-barrel shotgun, shortening the overall length to approximately 23 inches, or 580 millimeters. I don't even know what that even means. Meanwhile, Harris's Savage Springfield 12-gauge pump shotgun was sawn off to around 26 inches, or 660 millimeters. The shooters also possessed a TEC-DC-9 semi-automatic handgun, which had a long history. The manufacturer of the TEC-DC-9 first sold it to Miami-based Navgar Incorporated. It was then sold to Zander Sporting Goods in Baldwin, Illinois in 1994. The gun was later sold to a firearms dealer in Larry Russell in Thornton, Colorado. In violation of federal law, Russell failed to keep records of the sale, yet he determined that the purchaser of the guns was 21 years of age or older. Two men, Mark Maines and Philip Duran, were convicted of supplying the weapons to the two. The bombs used by the pair varied and were crudely made from carbon dioxide canisters, galvanized pipe and metal propane tanks. The CO2 and pipe bombs were primed with matches placed at one end and to the other end of their fuses. Both had striker tips on their sleeves. When they rubbed against the bomb, the match head lit the fuse. The weekend before the shootings, Harris and Klebold had purchased propane tanks and other supplies from a hardware store for a few $100s. Several residents of the area claimed to have heard glass breaking and buzzing sounds from the Harris family's garage, which later concluded to indicate they were constructing pipe bombs. More complex bombs, such as the one that detonated on the corner of South Wadesworth Boulevard and Ken Carroll Avenue, had timers. The two largest bombs built were found in the school cafeteria and were made from small propane tanks. Only one of these bombs went off, only partially detonating. It was estimated that if any of the bombs placed in the cafeteria had not detonated properly, the blast could have caused extensive structural damage to the school and would have resulted in hundreds of casualties. Now, the massacre. On April 20th, Weed Day, 1999, just weeks before Harris and Klebold were both due to graduate, Brooks Brown, who was smoking a cigarette outside during lunch break, saw Harris arrive at school. Brown had severed his friendship with Harris a year earlier after Harris had thrown a chunk of ice at his car windshield. Brown reconciled with Harris just prior to the shooting. Brown approached Harris near his car and scolded him for skipping his morning classes, because Harris was always serious about schoolwork and being on time, Harris replied. It doesn't matter anymore. Harris followed up a few seconds later. Brooks, I like you now. Get out of here. Go home. Brooks, who felt uneasy, quickly left the school grounds at 11:19 a.m. He heard the first gunshots after he had walked some distance away from the school and informed the police via a neighbor's cell phone. By that time, Klebold had already arrived at the school in a separate car, and the two boys left two duffel bags, each containing 20-pound propane bomb, inside the cafeteria. Their original plans indicated that when these bombs detonated, Harris and Klebold would be waiting at the cars and would would shoot, stab, and throw bombs at survivors of the initial explosion as they ran out of the school. At noon, this would be followed by bombs set up in their personal cars, detonating, killing first responders and others on scene. When these devices failed to detonate, Harris and Klebold resorted to gunning down their classmates and teachers. It was the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history until it was surpassed by the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting committed by Nicholas Cruz on February 14, 2018. Harris was responsible for 8 of the 13 confirmed deaths. Rachel Scott, Daniel Rarbo, teacher Dave Sanders, Steve Kernow, Cassie Bernal, Isaiah Schulz, Kelly Fleming, and Daniel Mauser. While Klebold was responsible for the remaining 5. Kyle Velasquez, Matthew Ketcher, Lauren Townsend, John Tomlin, and Corey DePuter. There were 24 injured, 21 of them by shooters and most in critical condition. Now, I know I butchered a lot of those names, which I'm sorry. Now, suicide. Because I actually did not know this, but they actually committed suicide. At 12:02 p.m., Harris and Klebold returned to the library. Of the 56 library hostages, 34 remained unharmed, all of whom escaped after Harris and Klebold left the library initially. Investigators later found that Harris and Klebold had enough ammunition to have killed them all. This was 20 minutes after their lethal shooting spree had ended, leaving 12 students dead, 1 teacher dying, and another 24 students and staff injured. 10 other victims had been killed in the library. It is believed they came back to the library to watch their car bombs detonate, which had been set up to explode at noon. This, although did not happen, as the aforementioned bombs failed. Harris and Klebold went to the west windows and opened fire on police outside. No one was injured in the exchange. Between 3 and 6 minutes later, they walked to the bookshelves near a table where Patrick Ireland lay badly wounded and coming in and out of consciousness. Student Lisa Kreutz, injured in the earlier library attack, was also in the room, unable to move. By 12:08 p.m., Harris and Klebold had killed themselves. In a subsequent interview, Kreutz recalled hearing a comment such as, "You in the library." Around this time, Harris sat down with his back to a bookshelf and fired his shotgun through the roof of his mouth. Klebold went down on his knees and shot himself in the left temple with his Tech-9. An article by the Rocky Mountain News stated that Patty Nielsen overheard them shout, "1, 2, 3," in unison just before a loud boom. Nielsen said that she never spoken with either of the writers of the article, and evidence suggested otherwise. Just before shooting himself, Klebold lit a Molotov cocktail on a nearby table underneath which Ireland was lying, which caused the tabletop to momentarily catch fire. Underneath the scorched film of material was a piece of Harris's brain matter, suggesting Harris had shot himself by this point. Bullying. At the end of Harris's last journal entry, he wrote, "I hate you people for leaving me out of so many fun things. And no, don't fucking say, well, that's your fault, because it isn't. You people had my phone number, and I asked, and all but no. No. Don't let the weird-looking Eric kid come along. Ooh, fucking no." However, in another entry by Eric in his journals, he stated that that even if he were complimented and respected more by his peers, the attack would have still in all likelihood occurred. Similarly, Klebold wrote in his journal both about perceived rejections, bullying others, his desire to belong, and his extreme contempt for others. In January 1997, he wrote, "I am God compared to some of these unexistable brainless zombies," referring to his perception of the morons of the world. In March of 97, he wrote, "I do shit to supposedly cleanse myself in a spiritual, moral sort of way, trying not to ridicule or make fun of people at school, yet it does nothing to help my life morally." Klebold said on the Basement Tapes, "You've been giving us shit for years. You fucking gonna pay for this shit. We don't give a shit, because we're all going to die doing it." However, they also stated on the tapes that nobody is to blame and nobody could have prevented the attack. Accounts from various parents and school staffers describe bullying at the school as rampant. Nathan Vandaru, a friend of Klebold, and Alyssa Owen, Harris's 8th grade science partner, reported that Harris and Klebold were constantly picked on. Vandaru noted that a cup of fecal matter was thrown at them. People surrounded them in commons and squirted ketchup packets all over them, laughing at them, called them faggots. Brooks Brown says, "That happened while the teachers watched. They couldn't fight back. They wore the ketchup all day and went home covered in it." In his book, No Easy Answers, The Truth Behind Death at Columbine, Brown wrote that Harris was born with mild chest indent. This made him reluctant to take his shirt off in gym class, and other students would laugh at him. A lot of the tension in the school came from the class above us, Chad Laughlin states. There were people fearful of walking by a table where you knew you didn't belong, stuff like that. Certain groups certainly got preferential treatment across the board. I caught the tail end of one really horrible incident, and I know Dylan told his mother that it was the worst day of his life. That incident, according to Laughlin, involved seniors pelting Klebold with ketchup-covered tampons in the commons, which I don't really know what that means. Maybe like the halls or something. However, other commentators have disputed the theory that the bullying was the motivating factor. Jeff Cass, who has also published a book on the attack, believes that bullying wasn't the cause. Peter Langman also argues against bullying being the cause of the attack. Other researchers have concurred. Now, this is a lot. Now, journals and investigation. Harris began keeping a journal in April 1998, a short time after the pair was charged with breaking into the van, for which each received 10 months of juvenile intervention, counseling, and community service in January of 98. They began to formulate plans as reflected in their journals. Harris wanted to join the United States Marine Corps, but his application was rejected shortly before the shootings because he was taking the drug fluvoxamine and SSRI antidepressant, which he was required to take as part of court-ordered anger management therapy. Harris did not state in his application that he was taking any medications, according to the recruiting officer. Harris did not know about this rejection, though some friends of Harris suggested that he had stopped taking the drug beforehand. The autopsy reports showed low therapeutic or normal, non-toxic or lethal blood levels of fluvoxamine in his system, which was around 0.0031 or 0.0087 milligrams or milliliters at the time of death. After the shootings, opponents of the contemporary psychiatry and like Peter Breggin claimed that the psychiatric medications prescribed to Harris after his conviction may have exacerbated his aggressiveness. Klebold entitled his journal A Virtual Book, Existences. Klebold's first journal entry was March 31st of 97, over a year prior to when Harris began his own writings. And in it, he talks about his depression and suicidal thoughts over 2 years prior to the massacre. For the rest of his writings, Klebold often wrote about his view that he and Harris were godlike and more highly involved than every other human being, but his secret journal records the aforementioned self-loathing and suicidal intentions. Page after page was covered in hearts as he was secretly in love with a Columbine student. Although both had difficulty controlling their anger, Klebold's anger had led to his being more prone to serious trouble than Harris. After their arrest, which both records as the most traumatic thing they ever experienced, Klebold wrote a letter to Harris saying how they would have so much fun getting revenge and killing police, and how his wrath from the January arrest would be godlike. On the day of the massacre, Klebold wore a black t-shirt which had the word wrath printed in red. It was speculated that revenge for the arrest was a possible motive for the attack, and the pair planned on having a massive gun battle with police during the shooting. Klebold wrote that life was no fun without a little death, and that he would like to spend the last moments of his life in nerve-wracking twists of murder and bloodshed. He concluded by saying that he would kill himself afterward in order to leave the world that he hated and go to a better place. Klebold was described as being hot-headed but depressive and suicidal. Some of the home-recorded videos, called the basement tapes, have reportedly been destroyed by police. Harris and Klebold reportedly discussed their motives for the attacks in these videos and gave instructions in bomb making. Police cite the reason for withholding these tapes as an effort to prevent them from becoming call to arms and how-to videos that could inspire copycat killers. Some people have argued that releasing the tapes would be helpful in terms of allowing psychologists to study them, which in turn could possibly help identify characteristics of future killers. Psychological analysts. Although early media reports attributed the shootings to a desire for revenge on the part of Harris and Klebold for bullying, that they received subsequent psychological analysts indicated Harris and Klebold harbored serious psychological problems. Harris and Klebold were never diagnosed with any mental disorders, which is overwhelmingly uncommon in mass shooters, according to Supervisory Special Agent Dwayne Fuselier, the FBI's lead Columbine investigator and a clinical psychologist. Harris exhibited a pattern of grandiosity, attempt, and lack of empathy or remorse, distinctive traits of psychopaths that Harris concealed through deception. Fuselier adds that Harris engaged in mendacity not merely to protect himself, as Harris rationalized in his journal, but also for pleasure, as seen when Harris expressed his thoughts in his journal regarding how he and Klebold avoided prosecution for breaking into a van. Other leading psychiatrists concur that Harris was a psychopath. According to psychologist Peter Langman, Klebold displayed signs of schizotypal personality disorder. He struck many people as odd due to his shy nature, appeared to have had disturbed thought processes, and constantly misused language in unusual ways, as evidenced by his journal. He appeared to have been delusional, viewed himself as godlike, and wrote that he was made a human without possibility of being human. He was also convinced that others hated him and felt like he was being conspired against, even though, according to many reports, Klebold was loved by his family and friends. Now, lawsuits. Here we go. We're almost done, actually. Lawsuits. In April 2001, the families of more than 30 victims were given shares in a $2,538,000 settlement by the families of the perpetrators, and the two men convicted of supplying the weapons used in the massacre. The Harrises and the Klebolds contributed $1,568,000 to the settlement from their own homeowners' policies. Maines contributed $720,000, and Duran contributed $250,000. The Harrises and Klebolds were ordered to guarantee an additional $32,000 to be available against any further claims. Maines was ordered to hold $80,000 against future claims, and Duran ordered to hold $50,000. One family had filed a $250 million lawsuit against the Harrises and Klebold in 1999 and did not accept the 2001 settlement terms. A judge ordered the family to accept a $366,000 settlement in June 2003. In August 2003, the families of 5 other victims received undisclosed settlements from the Harrises and Klebolds. Last but not least, we got reaction of Sue Klebold. Sue Klebold, the mother of Dylan Klebold, initially was in denial about Klebold's involvement in the massacre, believing he was tricked by Harris into doing it. Among other things, 6 months later, she saw the basement tapes made by Harris and Klebold and acknowledged that Klebold was equally responsible for the killings. She spoke about the Columbine High School massacre publicly for the first time in an essay that appeared in the October 2009 issue of O, the Oprah magazine. In the piece, Klebold wrote, for the rest of my life, I will be haunted by the horror and anguish Dylan caused, and Dylan changed everything I believed about myself, about God, about family, and about love, stating that she had no clue of her son's intentions, she said. Once I saw the journals, it was clear to me that Dylan entered the school with the intention of dying there. In Andrew Solomon's 2012 book, Far from the Tree, she acknowledged that on the day of the massacre, when she discovered that Klebold was one of the shooters, she prayed he would kill himself before committing a mass murder. I had a sudden vision of what he might be doing, and so while every other mother in Littleton was praying that her child was safe, I had to pray that mine would die before he hurt anyone else. In February 2016, Klebold published a memoir titled A Mother's Reckoning about her experiences before and after the massacre. It was co-written by Laura Tucker and included an introduction by National Book Award winner Andrew Solomon. It received very favorable reviews, including from the New York Times Book Review. It peaked at number 2 on the New York Times bestseller. On February 2nd, 2017, Klebold posted a TED Talk titled, My Son Was a Columbine Shooter. This is my story. As of January 2024, the video has over 12.1 million views. The site listed Klebold's occupation as activist and stated, Sue Klebold has become a passionate agent working to advance mental health awareness and intervention. Now, that was a lot. That was over 50 minutes of me talking and reading about the Columbine killers. Yeah. So before we get off this video, hint for the next video. The serial killer, in the next video, it's a woman. I forgot her name. I know I could just look it up, but she's a serial killer that made soap out of her victims and used it to bathe her son. Now, I think his name was Dominic. I think her son's name was. Now, if you guys think you know who I'm talking about, please write it down in the comments below. And we also had 2 special guests, Chloe, and we have Roxy. Yeah. If you heard about the 40 mark or whatever, 35 mark, Roxy was opening the door. Yeah, so without further ado, if you guys had stayed with me for almost an hour, I greatly appreciate it. This was a long-ass video. And not next Monday, but the Monday after, I will be doing a mystery. Now, just by the hint of the Christmas mystery, you guys can already figure out which one I'm going to be doing. Alright, this is the time of season of giving and getting. Well, more giving. But, if you guys can give me some views and subscribe to my channel, I will give you some really good content. I would also have to learn how to edit more, though. But without further ado, if you like this video, please like. Even if you didn't, please like, comment, subscribe. Catch you guys in the next video. Hopefully Monday. I'll see you guys later. Peace.